Happy Easter, happy Passover, and what a wonderful day it is to shine like a diamond. That's what we're going to open ourselves up to shine like the diamond that we truly are. Because each and every one of us came into this life to shine bright. We really did. We came in to shine bright just like a diamond shines. To radiate, to amaze with the brilliance of the divine shining forth as us, through us, in us. So now perhaps we might need a little bit of polishing, like when the stone comes out of the ground. Perhaps the rough edges need to be sanded away. And it could be that we're covered up with a little grime and dirt. As you pull a gemstone from the ground, it needs to be polished to shine. And then what comes forth is this brilliance. And this is the brilliance that is within each and every one of us. And when I say brilliance, I'm talking about the capital B brilliance. Anything with a capital is describing the divine within us. So repeat after me. I am bright like a diamond and I'm ready to shine.
I am bright like a diamond and I'm ready to shine.
Great, now turn to your neighbor and say, you are so bright, I need my shades.
You are so bright, I need my shades.
All right, now we're feeling that brightness, so we will arise and shine into our brilliance this sacred Easter morning. I have a wonderful talk. I'm excited about it. As we're going to explain the metaphysics behind the Easter events, right? The darkness of the crucifixion, the light of the resurrection, and finally the brilliance of the ascension. So as we explore these three aspects of the Easter story, we will see that it can be our story. We're going to take it as our story and how we can shine the brilliance of God in and through and as us. That's what I want us to leave with today, to be in that ascension mode, to really ascend out of whatever is going on in our lives. Because in metaphysics, which means beyond the physical, in metaphysics we look at everything in the Bible as allegorical in our lives. A story for us to learn from. It's a story for us to deepen our relationship with the indescribable, with God, with the infinite source of all good. And so, are you ready to do that this day?
I'm ready.
I think so.
Bring it on.
First, the darkness of the crucifixion. So in the Easter story, as well as in our story, moving to the light of the resurrection, and then on to the brilliance of the ascension, and leaving behind the darkness of the crucifixion. Okay? The scripture tells us on this day, Jesus was crucified. Darkness fell upon the land from the 6th to the 9th hour. And on the 9th hour, he died. In Matthew chapter 27, starting at verse 51, it is reported that when Jesus died, the curtains at the door of the temple were torn from the top to the bottom. So the curtains to the temple came down. And a great earthquake occurred, causing some of the tombs to open up and release the spirits of those who were in there. So in this moment, the crucifixion had a very dark, and it was a very dark and scary moment. Those around were frightened. They were frightened. Things were breaking all around them. And for many, it seemed like all was lost. Not only is there chaos, but that which they believed in was destroyed. So from the human point of view, can we relate to that sometimes? From the viewpoint of the facts of this material world which we live in, because we have this dualistic experience. We have the divine nature within us, and we have experiences that are taking place that don't seem divine at all. So we as divine beings are experiencing a human life, a human experience, and sometimes there's darkness in that. And so remember, in metaphysics, we look at everything that the Bible tells us as a story, something to learn from, an interpretation. And it's a story about us. It's about our deepening into a relationship with the divine within us, that infinite source of all good that is within each and every one of us. Can we not see ourselves in the darkness of a moment like that? We have darkness in our lives. And who hasn't faced a devastating, scary experience, a great loss, something very important that died away in their life? Who has not? It's part of our experience. Where we have experienced pain and heartbreak, where it seems like that which was real is not real anymore, where we cannot see the light. We can't see the light through the darkness. We've all been in spots like that, I'm guessing. I don't know. We could have enlightened beings right sitting. I wish we did. I hope we do. Because I know that each and every one of us, when we leave here today, is going to be a whole lot more enlightened as they ascend that darkness. Some of you may be going through darkness right here, right now, that which feels like a crucifixion right now. And if you are, I'm so glad that you are joining us this day, because this is the day where what keeps coming through me all morning, all day, is there are Easter miracles taking place all around me. There are Easter miracles taking place all around different loved ones as I think of them. So I'm holding that Easter miracle. And the miracle is the good of God showing through each and every person, no matter where they are or what kind of situation they're in. I think our nation, I think our world is going through a darkness right now. I truly do. And it's a good thing, though. I'll get to that. It's a good thing. You got to go through that crucifixion to be resurrected, right? So collectively, humanity right now is in chaos. And it's in that chaos mode where systems and ways of being are no longer working for us. There's a change going on. They're breaking down. Anyone else notice this, or just me? Just seeing a few things that, wow. It's in our face, but it's in our face for a reason. Evolution is wanting to come forth. That's what's going on. So when evolution is coming forth, ways of being that don't suit it anymore must fall away. They must die. And even though it is dark and scary, there must be a crucifixion before we can have that resurrection. In fact, the darkness of crucifixion opens the way for that light to come through. There's a brilliant light, and that's what we hold on to. The truth that there is a light that is so brilliant, that is the truth of our being, that is eternal, that is just like a diamond shining within us, within us. And even though all of that looks that way, there is so much light with that, just that little bit of willingness to open to it. The 19th century German philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe wrote this: "To be a traveler on this earth, you must know how to die and come to life again." Because it keeps happening. Situations, circumstances, relationships, they change all of the time. And then we move into the resurrection. It begins. This is when we begin to awaken to the light. We come to this knowledge that there is something so much more greater than we as humans truly are. And even if we're just a little teeny bit open, just a little bit, it's all the light needs to get through that crack, is a little bit of openness. And then the light of resurrection can come through, uplift us, change us, lead us to areas that we didn't even know existed. Oh, there's so much good in that. And it's spoken here in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28. He says, when the first day of the week began to dawn, there came Mary of Magdala and the other Mary to see the tomb. In Mark and Luke, we are told that they came with spices to anoint the body. Now, I certainly don't know what was going through the two Marys' heads, but I think that they were expecting some kind of good to take place, some kind of miracle to occur. Even though they saw the death, they saw Jesus crucified, as the story tells us, they still, I just would have to think that, expected a miracle. Some light in all that darkness. They knew that Jesus had died because they witnessed it. But in them, could there have been a glimmer of hope of some sort? Some kind of miracle? And I don't think it's unreasonable to think about this. I'm an optimistic person, and I know a lot of you are. And in that optimism, I'm always expecting some good to take place. I'm always expecting that glimmer of light to fill a situation, even when it looks like it is so dark and scary and changeable, because everything is changeable, except for the light within us. It's immutable. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, goes on to say, the angel of the Lord came down from heaven, went up and rolled away the stone from the door and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his garments were as white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards who were watching trembled and became as though they were dead. But the angel answered, saying to the women, you need not be afraid, for I know that you are seeking Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here, for he has risen just as he had said. Even though everything appears dead in our lives, if we're awakened enough, just enough, to see a glimmer of light, we will arise. We will arise and shine to new levels of life that we didn't even know existed. Ernest Holmes tells us in his book, Science of Mind, to practice the presence of God is to awaken within us the Christ consciousness. Christ is God in the soul of humankind. The resurrection is the death of the belief that we are separate from God. For death is to the illusion alone and not to reality. God did not die. What happened was that we awoke to life. The awakening must be on our part, since God is already life. Love this. This is the promise of Easter. It's really an incredible message. It really is. The coming of the light, the beginning, the claiming of the brilliance. In the words of Walter Starkey in his book, It's All God. He wrote this. This is good. The breaking up of old forms is Easter's prelude to a new level of life on earth. Death and resurrection didn't come once in a lifetime. Every time there's a divorce, a partner dies, one loses a job, or every time there is a shift in consciousness whatsoever, the old identity it dies and a new one is born. Every shift in consciousness brings on an identity crisis. If we understand and welcome our personal Easters, we will be born again into a better place. And he continues, unfortunately, we have been trained to believe that crucifixion, the dark or the shadow side, represents failure and should be avoided. Instead, when we see it as the flip side of resurrection, as no more than a stage in the creative and divine process, we will come out triumphant. So through all the darkness, so that's when we say there is no such thing as failure. It is simply a lesson in life to move forward and to be that optimistic self, to see the light and the lesson in every single circumstance. I don't care what it is, to see that light, to hold it for those who can't see it. That's our job as metaphysicians. And every time we shine the light of truth onto the negativity of the world, the negativity that's hanging out in our minds, because sometimes we have a lot of that, we experience the light of the resurrection. We're being resurrected into the light of the divine. As the Apostle Paul said, we are transformed by the renewing of our minds. Always changing, doing that mind check. What are we thinking? What can I change? How can I see this better? How can I let the light shine in when this feels like nothing but darkness? How can I? And in that asking, the divine will give you an answer. It's the way it works. This morning, this beautiful Easter morning, I ordered this weather, by the way. I did. I know it's going to be sunny and beautiful. So on this beautiful Easter morning, I invite you to renew your mind about who you are. Who you are. Because it's the only person you have any control over. If you thought you had control over your kids, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, you do not. You don't. You only have control over yourself. Are you going? So here we go. Are you going to agree with your smallness or your greatness? With your dullness or your brilliance? In other words, about your separation from or connection to the source of all good. It's one or the other. One or the other. When you have a small or dull or separating thought about who and whose you are, a thought that shuts down your greatness and your brilliance, a thought that brings about a sense of separation, you have, this is cool, you have 10 seconds to shift it. 10 seconds. Why? I love this. Because at about 10 seconds, you will say these words consciously or unconsciously. I agree. No matter what the thought is, I agree. And in that agreement, you have set the law of God into motion. The universe can do nothing but bring forth what you agree to. What are you agreeing to? Are you agreeing to being a beautiful shining light, personalized as you, or to smallness, to dullness, to playing it really little? Something to ask. So, when you begin to do that, open up to the greatness, the brilliance of who you are, true miracles do occur. And the miracle of the ascension of our consciousness happens. Our consciousness is elevated, and we begin to really get into a zone of shining this brilliant light. And I'm not just talking about nice words here. I'm talking about a way of being in the world. What are we agreeing to? Are we agreeing to the beauty that we are? Each and every one of us? So we move into the brilliance of ascension then. And Luke 24, beginning at verse 36, says this. And while they, meaning the disciples, were discussing these things, Jesus stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you. It is I. Do not be afraid." They were confused and frightened, for they thought they saw a spirit. I mean, he was just crucified. Put him in this cave with a rock. Pulled the rock away, and he's gone. He's ascended with his physical form. Jesus then spent the next bit of time proving who he was, and that he was alive, topping it off with asking for and receiving something to eat. Spirit seed, I guess. It just makes me very happy. The scripture then reads, "And he said to them, I will send upon you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you had been clothed with the power from on high. And it came to pass, while he blessed them, he parted from them and went up to heaven. In metaphysical Bible study, we look at the references to city as meaning our minds, or a space in our minds where the good and the truth co-join. Jesus said to them, "Stay in the place of your mind until illumination comes, until the brilliance of the ascended consciousness comes." Don't you love that? And you have, and if you don't have it now, you can open to it, an ascended consciousness. The second coming may not be when Jesus descends into this form, into this area, but into humankind, but it may be when we recognize and awaken to the brilliance of who we really are. We are already that, and we don't know it. So today is a very, very powerful day. It really is. It's that day of crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. The Easter story put into metaphysical terms for our lives, how we can live. So are you ready for the second coming of Christ by realizing that the darkness of the crucifixion is part of this Easter story, an important part? Darkness is an important part of our life, each and every one of us. And at the same time that the darkness is occurring, trusting that there is a divinity in the middle of it. You're not alone. We are never, ever alone. And today you will awaken. You will awaken to the light of Christ's consciousness and be resurrected into God's peace, power, and love. Are you ready to do that? Yes. I sure am. So I breathe it in. You will be committing to letting go of smallness, if you so accept this task, dullness, and a sense of separation. That sense of being separate, rather than ascend into the fullness, the greatness, the connectiveness, the unity of the Father and I are one. That statement was very powerful. And if that's the only thing we remember, it's the most powerful thing to remember. There is only one present. My hope and my prayer is that in this very moment, this morning, that you say yes to your greatness. You say yes to your ascended consciousness. You say yes to all the good that is yet to unfold in each and every one of our lives, because I know it is there waiting for us to recognize it. It is always present. Remember, it can't die. So if it can't die, it must be alive within us. It has to be. It makes perfect sense. And so remember, you and I, we are the diamonds in the sky. We are all the good that we could ever want. We really are. And if we don't know it yet, leave that little crack open. Leave that little space for the awakening, the divine energy to flow through. Because as you do that, it can't help but flood your being with that ascended light, with that light that is beyond description, beyond description. You're here to celebrate and be the glory of the divine. And that's what I'm going to leave you with on this beautiful Easter morning.